Hello and welcome. I hope you are ready to talk Digimon today because we will be getting into Adventure 2. I have long been a Digifan, with the original Digimon Adventure series being amongst my favorite shows to this day. Over the past summer, I rewatched a large portion of that series and then decided to finally give Adventure 2 a shot. I was always a bit hesitant to watch the second series as I was so attached to the original's tone and characters and I wasn't sure it could be improved upon. I knew that the older Digidestined were still a part of this new show, but I did not understand how much the world and lore of Digimon would expand and evolve in this second series. It's different than the first, and that's a good thing. They both offer their own unique flair. A brief disclaimer, I have only ever watched the dub, and so that's the lore that I'm following. And I'll also say that the lore drops that happen in this season, especially in the later half, they can be a bit confusing at times, so I will do my best to explain it all, but I, of course, am not the final word on this, and if you have additional knowledge, please feel free to drop it in the comments. So, a brief overview of the timeline. Digimon Adventure 2 ran 3 months after the conclusion of Digimon Adventure and began airing just before the release of Digimon the movie in the United States, back in the year 2000. I actually made a video on the Digimon movie that spends a couple of minutes describing this history, so please watch that if you're interested. But essentially, Digimon is about a group of children called the Digidestined who are able to travel to a parallel digital world. There, they are each paired with their own Digimon, or digital monster, companion. There are often dark forces that seek to control and or destroy the Digiworld, so our protagonists are often fighting against the dark and defending the digital and human worlds alike. Digimon Adventure 2 picks up 3 years after the conclusion of the first series, so to my understanding, this would make the older kids around 13 to 14-ish, and TK and Kari and some of the new characters around 11 to 12. So we still have our original Digidestined characters present. Tai, Matt, Sora, Izzy, and Joe are all attending local high schools, and they all have their own interests that they pursue. Mimi is living in New York City, but she stays in contact with the others, travels to the Digiworld at times, and she plays a role later on when things become more globalized. TK and his mother move, and he ends up attending the same school as Kari and new characters Davis, Yoli, and Cody. The new Digidestined actually get pretty good character growth, most specifically with Davis and Ken. I would say Yoli also grows a lot, and Cody, though sometimes underutilized in my opinion, does get his time to shine, and he is in some ways like a moral compass for the group, to a stubborn degree at times. I'll now give a brief introduction to these characters and their Digimon, but they will become more fleshed out as I recap the episodes themselves. To start, we have good old TK. He is a pretty solid character and very likable. He's pretty much his same self that we knew from Digimon Adventure, just older. He is usually in a pretty good mood, he's easygoing, self-assured, and he really cares about the others. He is, of course, still partnered with Patamon. TK does get some interesting emotional development at different times in the series, and I'll touch on that more when we get to those episodes. But I'll just say he does have more depth than one might think, and he has an edge to him at times as well. I think he hides a lot of pain and fear deep down, and like I said, we will learn more about that. TK notably lives with his mother, while his older brother Matt lives with their father. All in all, I love TK, and I like his new updated outfit in this era. Next up is Kari. She is pretty much exactly the same as we knew her previously. She is still very sweet and caring, but she wrestles with a darkness inside. It's really interesting to see her bond with Ken, of all people, later on about said darkness. Kari is tenacious and loving, and she is paired with Gatomon, who continues to be the GOAT, though notably she is underpowered this season due to losing her tail ring, hence making her strength more comparable to a rookie. Kari and Tai's relationship is still a very positive aspect in this series as well. And Kari and TK obviously have a closer bond, which is more demonstrated in the earlier episodes, which makes sense as they naturally would take a little bit more time to know the others, so they often stick together. There is a scene where TK kind of reveals some deeper feelings in that he couldn't stand if something happened to Kari and he really cares about her, and we get her response of her caring about him as well. So this is all to say TK and Kari remain a great duo. Next, we'll discuss Davis. Before watching the full series, I only remembered Davis as being kind of obnoxious, hopelessly in love with Kari, and physically kind of a Tai knockoff. Davis is kind of hard to like too much at first, but he ends up becoming one of my favorite characters. His Digimon partner is Vmon, who is adorable, kind, and earnest, and Vmon has the most Digivolutions of the series, which we'll get into. Davis has the Digi-Eggs of courage and friendship, and he most certainly embodies these traits. Davis is often fearless, almost in a leap-before-looking kind of way, but he helps drive the action of the series, and his Digimon is invaluably powerful. He is said to take on the leadership role as Tai passes down his goggles to Davis, symbolizing this passing of the torch. As for friendship, Davis appears a bit friendless himself at the beginning of the series, but he develops a lot. His friendship with Ken is especially heartwarming to me, and I really enjoy the unfolding of that. Other things to note, Davis has an older sister named June, who Matt is honestly kind of rude to, but she seems very nice. She, like Davis, seem a little bit desperate for validation, but I do like her, and I really, really love that Digimon Adventure, both the original and 2, really allow us to see and build upon the Digidestined families. We move on to Yoli. I believe she's a year or so older than TK, Kari, and Davis due to a comment that she makes in an episode, but regardless, she is involved in the computer club at school. This provides her a link to Izzy as they can bond over their technological literacy, and her skills in that arena don't come up super often, especially as the series progresses, but she is able to provide skills much as Izzy does and did when necessary. There is a scene that comes to mind later on where she creates this music program on a giant computer on a whim, proving her skills. Yoli has multiple brothers and sisters, and her parents own a convenience store, which her friends and Digimon benefit from. Yoli is smart, confident, perhaps overzealous and bossy at times, but part of her character development is softening and connecting with others. She's got Sagittarius energy up the wazoo, if you ask me. Her Digimon partner is Hawkmon, who has a British accent, and Yoli is also the first Digidestined up until this point to have their rookie Digimon as the other gender. Yoli possesses the Digi-Eggs of love and sincerity. I quite like Yoli. I think she's multifaceted, and I respect her tenacity as well. She seems to take on a bit of a protective role over Cody at first, as they have a history having lived in the same building for some time. She has boy crazy tendencies from time to time, and one could even argue some girl craziness. I'm referencing a particular scene that I'll talk about later from the 6th episode where she is very into Mimi. She makes an effort to reach out to Ken mid-series, but in my opinion, their relationship is not built upon enough to justify the relationship that the finale tells us they have, though that aspect of things doesn't bother me either, and when they do interact, I do enjoy it. I will get into my thoughts on the finale later, as I'm not sure we needed that epilogue, I'm going to be honest. Okay, we have moved on to Cody now, and Cody is younger than the rest of the bunch. As mentioned, he lives in the same building as Yoli and TK. Cody is a very sweet, very well-mannered kid. He has a pure heart and lives with more traditional values. He lives with his mother and his grandfather, and we learn that his father, who I believe was a police officer, is deceased. His father plays an unexpectedly large role in the last few episodes of this series, and I actually really enjoy that. Cody's grandfather is a kendo master, and Cody often takes lessons from him. Cody is partnered with Armadillomon, who sounds very similar to Woody from Toy Story, in my opinion, and he's just an awesome little guy. He holds the Digi-Eggs of knowledge and reliability, and something that I really like is that all of the older Digidestined with corresponding crests connect with and provide guidance to the newer Digidestined, and I particularly like the relationship between Cody and Joe. Maybe it's the extra age difference, but Joe is very calm and reassuring and caring towards Cody, while Cody embodies respect and a desire to learn. Rounding out our new Digidestined team, we have Ken. Ken is a very interesting character and is definitely in the running for my favorite character. In my character overviews here, I didn't want to get too much into the plot or reveal too much yet, but that will be necessary for Ken. So Ken Ichijoji is a well-known boy genius. He is incredibly gifted academically and in other areas such as sports. At the start of the series, we are introduced to him as the Digimon Emperor. As such, he embodies pure evil, and I could not stand his cruelty. It's quite dark and unpleasant, and skipping over the specifics, with more details to come later, essentially Ken suffers from having a darkness, an evil dark spore implanted inside of him after the death of his older brother. That influence, as well as the fact that Ken did not believe the digital world was anything more than a video game, in a sense excuse his evil behavior, though his redemption is not quick and he suffers through it in a very emotionally compelling way. Ken has a mother and father that demonstrate their own character growth, and the Ichijoji family does end the series in a very good place. Ken's Digimon partner is Wormmon, whom I adore, and as the Digimon Emperor, unfortunately, Ken is extremely abusive and vicious to Wormmon, but as Ken returns to his true self, he and Wormmon have a very close and loving relationship. Ken is complex and unfortunately suffers unnecessarily, but he is a great addition to the team. He holds the crest of kindness. Now, to refresh our memories, here is a reminder of the original Digidestined and their Digimon. First, we obviously have Tai, who is Kari's older brother. He was the leader of the group holding the crest of courage. He is partnered up with Agumon, and another important relationship that Tai has is with Davis, as they are connected through playing soccer, and he mentors him as Davis takes up the new leadership role. Tai is really chill in this series, actually, and he's always there when people need him and is shown to be a really understanding friend to Sora as well at one point. And you can just tell that Tai has really matured. Next, we have TK's older brother, Matt. Matt plays in a band and has dalliances with Davis's sister as well as Sora, and we will most definitely be getting into that later. Matt seems kind of a bit off to me in some of the episodes that he's in. I've always really liked him, but in his teenage years, he comes across a tad more surface level. My favorite Matt plot is when he is paired up with Ken much later into the series. I think it's a really good episode and shows his personality well. As I mentioned earlier, Matt does not live with TK. He actually lives with their father, who I'm not gonna lie, like I'm kind of into and always have been. He's my favorite of the Digidestined's parents, and he's also always been kind of the most involved. Matt is of course paired with the wonderful Gabumon and holds the crest of friendship. Next we have Sora, who is partnered up with Biyomon. Sora holds the crest of love. Sora takes on a mentor role for Yoli, and they have some nice moments throughout the show. Additionally, Sora, as I mentioned, becomes involved with Matt, and that becomes an important relationship for her, though she still remains very friendly with Tai. And additionally, we are introduced to Sora's father for the first time, which is crazy, and he is connected to Joe's brother. So a tangled web we weave. Altogether, I feel like Sora is underutilized in this series, but I am happy whenever she does show up. I'll now discuss Izzy, who does take up a larger role as compared to Sora. He is our Crest of Knowledge fellow paired up with Tentamon, and this series really shows just how important Izzy and his tech skills are. I mean, this is demonstrated as well, like in the movie, but Izzy is often the linchpin in many important plot points. This is also reflected a la Tentamon this series, who plays a crucial role in connecting all of the Digimon throughout the Emperor arc. We get to see Izzy's parents in different points throughout the series, which is really nice. I just love his mom so much. Their relationship is genuinely very sweet. As mentioned, Izzy has a link to Yoli in that they are both computer whiz kids, and Izzy himself mentors Cody while also bonding with Ken later on, as they both possess advanced intellect. Then we have Joe, who has had kind of a slight glow up. I really love his longer hair and just his updated look, I suppose. He comes across much more grounded and calm this series, and I just really love whenever he and his Digimon partner, Gomamon, are on screen. He holds the crest of reliability. We are introduced to another one of Joe's brothers, but the dub just conflates them, and I would have let that go if not for a scene in the finale that actually shows both of Joe's brothers together. So We see Joe's brother Jim, who we met in the first series, and now his new brother, who works with Sora's dad. They also call Jim, but like I said, we see both Jims. So yeah, not really sure why they did that, but anyway, moving on, we finally reach Mimi. I think I'll always be a little salty at how Mimi gets less screen time, but her international status does play a pivotal role in this series. She connects the original Japanese Digidestin group that we know and love to others in New York and beyond. Her partner is Palmon, and she has the crest of sincerity. Mimi tries out multiple hairstyles this series, which is kind of fun. She begins with her iconic pink hair, tries out some orange, but eventually settles back into her longer, light brown locks. She and Yoli have a couple of very good scenes together as well. Okay, with all of that said, let's get into the plot. More character analysis will come in my discussion of the episodes themselves, but as a general plot overview, the series contains 50 episodes, so it's just a little bit shorter than the original Digimon adventure. In terms of plot, there is a lot going on, but I feel that the show can generally be divided into two main parts. The first half of the series focuses on battling the Digimon Emperor. These first 23-ish episodes feel more like a natural extension of the first series. There is a subtle shift in tone with new character introductions later on, specifically with the arrival of Arukenimon, Mummymon, and then Black War Greymon. I was not ready for where those characters would go or for what/who they are revealed to be. By the time we get to Oikawa, the plot does circle back to its origins and connects everything, but the show almost exponentially expands at a certain point. For now, I'll start at the beginning. I'm going to do my best to give quick summaries for each episode, and I will highlight important moments as well as moments that stood out to me. I wasn't necessarily planning to do an episode by episode breakdown, but as I started making this, I thought I might as well go all out and be as comprehensive as I can be. Okay, episode 1, Enter Flamedramon. The entire story begins with Digimon yelling out, "Run for your lives! It's the evil Digimon Emperor!" We see said Emperor whipping Digimon and sending out dark rings, which enslave Digimon and work very similarly to the Black Gears from the original series. We also see Gatomon being attacked by one of the enslaved Digimon, and in this fight she loses her tail ring. On the human side of things, we cut to TK in his new apartment building heading out for the first day of school. In the elevator, he meets Yoli and Cody, and they head to school, where TK meets Davis and joins his and Kari's class. From the start, we are shown that Davis is super into Kari and is very jealous of her friendship with TK. Back in the Digi world, our OG rookies are under attack and Agumon calls Tai for help. We learn that the Digimon Emperor has prevented them from digivolving. Tai sends for help, but in the meantime stumbles upon the Digi Egg of Courage. When he attempts to pick it up, 3 Digivices pop out and make their ways to Davis, Yoli, and Cody. Izzy shows up at the middle school, and TK, Kari, and Davis head to the digital world. In these earlier episodes, when the kids head to the Digi world, the song Here We Go plays. In fact, many of the Digimon Adventure and Digimon the Movie soundtrack songs play in the earlier episodes, and I only realized rewatching for this video that the music just stops at a certain point. The score is still there, but they stop using the actual songs. Again, that coincides kind of with this tone shift that happens. So now when in the digital world, we see Patamon and Gatomon reunite with TK and Kari, which is very sweet. Gatomon explains that a human has a dark digivice that makes them unable to digivolve. Davis is able to lift the Digi Egg of Courage, and we meet Vmon. Agumon introduces him as a fun-loving, adventure-seeking little Digimon that brings you good luck. They are attacked by a Monochromon, but Davis utilizes the Digi Egg, and Vmon armored digivolves to Flamedramon, the Fire of Courage. I'll take a minute here to note how I love that in the Digivolution process for armor digivolving, we see the Digivolutions of the Digimon of the original Digidestined who had the corresponding crest. Flamedramon does his thing and destroys the Dark Ring. I legitimately think that Flamedramon is like very cool, by the way, like the way he talks and everything, he's just like a cool guy. But at the end of this episode, Tai passes on his goggles to Davis, symbolizing the passing of the torch into this new era. Another side note, the voice actors did so good at aging up their characters, like specifically Ty and Izzy for this episode. It was very well done. The kids return home via these little TVs that pop up and visualize the gates to the real world. The episode ends there, and we move on to episode 2, The Digi Team Complete. This picks up immediately after the conclusion of the previous episode, and all of the kids are in the computer room. Yoli goes back to Cody's to help with his computer, whilst we see Davis thinking about Vmon. And then we see the original Digitestin team, Sans Mimi, meet up together at a local park. Tai and TK explain to everyone that there are new Digidestined and that their own Digimon can no longer Digivolve. Kari mentions getting an email from Mimi, so she's definitely in the loop. The next day, Izzy, Tai, and Sora head to the middle school. The whole squad is about to go through the gate to the Digiworld when our old friend Mr. Fujiyama stops in for a cameo. Turns out he's the new head of the computer club, and I love this, but we don't actually ever see him again, unfortunately. Like, I could see how he could have been a fun character to include, but that's okay. For the purposes of this episode, Tai distracts him in a very humorous little scene, and the others make their way to the Digiworld. We get our reunions for Tentamon and Izzy and Beelmon and Sora, but those are interrupted by enslaved Digimon sent by the Digimon Emperor. The group is separated, and Davis encounters the Emperor solo. The others find new Digi-Eggs, and Yoli receives the Digi-Egg of Love, while Cody receives the Digi-Egg of Knowledge. We meet their partners, Hawkmon and Armadillomon, respectively. Sora gives a sweet pep talk to Yoli, while Izzy chats with Cody. The new Digimon then armor Digivolve, and we meet Halsamon, the Wings of Love, and Digmon, the Drill of Power. They all go to rescue Davis and free the Digimon that were sent by the Emperor, while the song Runaround plays. They return home, and we hear Tai say, as he comes back to the room, "Oh, the birds and the bees, huh? Thanks, Mr. Fujiyama. Boy, when it comes to girls, this guy's sure got a lot to learn." The others all return, and we meet the in-training forms of the new Digimon, Demi-Vmon, Poromon, and Upamon. The other rookie Digimon stay stationed in the Digiworld. Episode 3, A New Digitude. In this episode, we learn more about Cody. We hear that his dad has passed away, and Cody has some very strict ways in which he makes himself live. He also seems to think that the others won't take him seriously, which is unfortunately kind of true. At the end of the episode, he recommends finding out the human identity of the Digimon Emperor, but he is patronized by Davis and Yuli. We also learn more about Ken, as he is featured on the news for being a whiz kid boy genius, good at everything, and his parents are introduced. We also see that he's kind of an evil psycho, and he just behaves terribly. The kids head to the Digiworld and encounter the Emperor, and in this episode, TK and Kari get their Digi-Eggs, obviously of Hope and Light, and their Digivices are upgraded to the new model. Patamon and Gatomon armor Digivolve into Pegasusmon, Flying Hope, and Nefertimon, the Angel of Light. They go and save the others from the Emperor while I'm Going Digital plays, and they win for the moment. Episode 4, Iron Vegemon. This episode introduces the Control Spires, and we see the Emperor continues to take over the digital world. Izzy and Tai realize that the new Digivices are necessary in order to open the gate to the Digiworld. Gabumon, we see, is captured by the Emperor, and as he tries to escape, he's attacked by Red Vegemon. We cut to Matt, who is playing with his band, and I kind of like the song that they're playing. I'd be a fan. TK goes to see Matt, and here we meet June, Davis's older sister, and we see she's a little boy crazy and asks them both to sign her t-shirt. The brothers then get an alert on their Digivices, and the new crew plus Matt head to the Digiworld. Gabumon and Matt reunite, and there's this sad line actually from Gabumon where he says to Matt, "Oh, we never talk anymore." And their friendship has always been something that I consider really sweet, and recall very strongly the scene in the episode from the first series where Matt is stuck in the cave and Gabumon gets him out of his depressive funk, and they talk about being friends for life. So hopefully they talk a lot and catch up and get back to being the best of friends. In this episode, Matt teaches Davis patience and strategy and reminds him that fighting should only be a last resort. Davis has an absolute meltdown at one point, and he clearly has very low self-esteem, which is sad. Davis mentions his sister, and Matt reacts very strongly to this, to the point that they almost get into a physical fight. Kari joins in the shaming and says not to talk badly about siblings. This really does Davis in, and he is depressed that Kari is upset with him, but Veemon is amazing and really loves Davis, so he tries to cheer him up. Vegemon is tricked into destroying the Control Spire, and Gabumon digivolves. Hell yeah, we get Garurumon. Tai, Izzy, and Yoli join them, and they realize that the Control Spires are what are preventing the original Digimon from digivolving into champions, and they also realize that they power the dark rings within an area. At the end, Izzy finds a map of the digital world that shows how many spires there are. Episode 5, Old Reliable. We are starting to see in this episode more of Wormon's personality and sweetness in little scenes here and there. This episode also features my boy Gomamon, and he stands up to the Digimon Emperor but is beat up by a swarm of Gizamon. I will note, like in the last episode when Gabumon and Veemon were being beat up, it seems very savage in a very dark way. Not exactly graphic, but graphically implied, if that makes sense. The Digimon Emperor really is just so dark and unjustifiable. A wounded Gomamon goes to call Joe for help. We cut to the school where we see Cody leaving to go to kendo practice, which is taught by his grandfather, instead of joining the others to go to the digital world. His grandfather is actually pretty cool, and I mentioned earlier, he plays a larger role later in the series. Cody very clearly wants to leave this kendo practice, and Gramps drops this wisdom. People will rely on you only to the extent you rely on yourself. I really like that message, actually. So Cody then leaves and goes back to the school, where we catch up with the others, and Joe arrives as well, and together they all head to the digital world. They find a very injured Gomamon, and while reuniting with him, Joe actually cries, which is very sweet. As Armadillomon comments in this moment, I always get misty at happy reunions. I actually think I'm gonna cry. Boy, same. Cody ends up falling into some freezing water as they escape the Emperor, who appears, and Joe takes really good care of him, and is just so awesome. I'm a big Joe fan, which I think is obvious. Joe and Cody stay behind while the others leave to go fight, and Cody is really upset with this and wants to go help, but Joe comforts him and says that all of us are here for a reason, and there's a big picture we just can't see right now, that their separation must be for a reason. At this point, the Emperor attacks Cody and Joe, and we realize the reason for their separation is that they can distract the Emperor so that the others can destroy the Control Spire. They do, and we get Ikakumon! Hell yeah. Let's Kick It Up plays, and they win the battle for the moment. At the end of the episode, Cody finishes his proper introduction to Joe, demonstrating again how important manners are to him. Cody then invites Joe and subsequently the rest of the Digidestined over to meet his grandfather, and it's really nice to see their blossoming friendships. Episode 6, Family Picnic. Mimi is visiting Japan this episode, looking fabulous in her pink hair, or strawberry blonde as she calls it. The younger kids sneak into the school on a Saturday as they plan to have a picnic in the Digi world and just relax there for once and not have to fight. Mimi randomly appears as she was apparently reminiscing, and introductions are made to the new Digidestined. I love that Mimi specifically asks Patamon and Gatomon how they have been, because the relationships between the Digidestined and the other non-partner Digimon are really enjoyable to me to see them all interact. So together they all head to the Digi world, and they have their picnic, but Yoli and Hawkmon wander away from the group. Mimi gets a little intuitive urge that something is amiss, so she goes off to find them, and all three of them get separated and are attacked near a control spire. Geckomon and Otamamon appear and recognize Princess Mimi, but they are unfortunately under the influence of dark rings. Palmon shows up and saves them, and there's a really tearful reunion between Palmon and Mimi, which I love to see. At this point, it's the attack of the Roachmon brothers. During this battle, Yoli fantasizes about her and Mimi, and I'm sorry, but there's no way to describe it other than very sapphic. The dialogue says that Yoli wants Mimi to be her beautiful sister. Yeah, it's giving Sailor Moon calling a lesbian couple cousins. But that little scene is unexpected but very welcome, and I love the little animation change that we get for her fantasy. Hawkmon armored digivolves into Halstamon, tricks the Roachmon brothers into destroying the Control Spire, thus allowing Palmon to digivolve into Togemon. They win the battle, and all of the kids reunite and return to the real world. Mimi says her goodbyes, and at the end, Yoli tells Mimi how much she wants to be just like her. And I'm not going to belabor this too much, but that is such a bi girl thing to say. Like, do I want to be you or do I want to be with you? All right, episode 7, Guardian Angel. The kiddos are working on destroying spires when they are attacked by a swarm of Gardramon, and there's just too many of them, so the kids decide to make their way through the gate back into the real world. But unfortunately, Kari is separated from the group and is left alone in the Digiworld due to the gate being destroyed. TK really blames himself for this, but Cody rightfully states that there is no one to blame. DK and Davis head back to the Digiworld, and Cody and Yoli decide to cover for their families because they're going back to the Digiworld, which means it will be later into the night, and their parents will start to get suspicious about where they are. We get a brief moment where Patamon digivolves into Angemon, which is very fun to see him again, and unfortunately once they get back to the city where Kari is, he reverts back to Patamon due to a control spire. We go back to the real world to see Matt cover for Davis, and in this interaction, Matt is forced into going out on a date with June. In the Digiworld, the boys find Kari, and Andromon appears, but he has a dark ring. Kari really tries to reach him and mentions the picture that they all took together, and it's like very sweet memories, but it takes Tai showing up for Andromon to recognize him and remember Kari too then after that. Things wrap up in the Digiworld for this episode, and Izzy is waiting at the school, and they give the new Digivices the name D3s, as there are 3 functions: Digital, Detect, and Discover. We hear Izzy mention that Willis actually helped him with the research on the D3s, and I love the little Willis shout out. He doesn't show up in this series ever again, unfortunately, but it makes sense that they would include his name here, as this episode would have aired right before the movie would have premiered in the United States. We also see Matt's dad in this episode, which I'm always overjoyed at any one of his appearances, so that is fun as well. Alrighty, episode 8, Ken's Secret. All of the kids, including Tai, show up to watch Davis play soccer, and his team is actually playing against Ken's soccer team. Yoli is fangirling for Ken and says that she wants to marry him. Well, dreams come true, I suppose. Ken is actually late to the game, but before he gets there, Davis is doing really well. Once Ken arrives, he recognizes the Digidestined in the stands watching, as well as recognizing Davis. Ken joins in the match and is extremely skilled and kind of wipes the floor with Davis's team. At one point, Davis trips Ken, and Ken receives a scrape on his leg. After the match, Davis goes up to apologize to him, and Ken calls him a worthy adversary. Later on, the kids head to the Digiworld, and Davis is separated from the rest of the group, and the Emperor shows up and tricks Davis, and in this scene, we actually see how much Davis is really starting to care about his friends. The Emperor wants Davis to choose only one of his friends to save, but Davis then offers himself instead. But it was all an illusion anyway, which is then broken, and they were just Bakumon pretending to be the Digidestined. The real Digidestined show up, and they all take on the Emperor. Davis actually tackles him and then sees the cut on his leg. At this point, Ken reveals his true identity to Davis. Episode 9, The Emperor's New Home. Ken is watching interviews of himself, and he's not in the best of moods, yeah? We see him interact with his parents, and he just feels like he's superior to everyone. Wormmon tries to cheer him up, but it doesn't really work, and Ken ends up leaving a very dark note for his parents, who they then assume him to have run away and report him to the police. The kids were actually going to track down where Ken lives anyway, and then they find out that he is missing. Ken is in the Digiworld, going bonkers, creating new control spires, and the kids head that way. The Emperor gets control of Greymon via a dark ring and tries to force him to digivolve into Metal Greymon, but he actually ends up turning into Skull Greymon instead. It's actually kind of cool to see him show up again, and TK remembers him and informs the others about what's going on. The battle ensues, and Skull Greymon de-digivolves into Agumon, and the Emperor captures him. Episode 10, The Captive Digimon. Tai and the younger kids head to the digital world, except for Yoli, who's kind of feeling off and wants to stay behind. They meet up with Tentomon, who provides some intel, and we see the Digimon Emperor is trying to force Skull Greymon to digivolve, and he ends up creating a dark spiral in order to be able to control higher level Digimon. Wormmon secretly helps Agumon escape before the spiral is actually complete. Agumon then reunites with Tai and the others, as the Emperor is raging and continues to abuse Wormmon, which is infuriating. He then catches up to the Digidestined and throws the Dark Spiral on Agumon, who Dark Digivolves straight to Metal Greymon, but a dark version. The armored Digimon are not able to stop Metal Greymon, and the Emperor gets away with him. Matt and Yoli show up, and Tai is really blaming himself for what happened, but Matt punches him very abruptly to knock some sense into him, and the episode ends in a dark kind of way where Tai tells everyone to just go full strength at Agumon, regardless of their relationships to him. I'm inserting a quick note here that really could go anywhere within the first, I don't know, maybe 20 episodes, maybe the whole show really, but the dub sometimes feels very odd and out of place, wherein like everything is a joke and doesn't always seem to fit the story. Like the dialogue sometimes is just based off of the visual on screen and not probably what the actual original dialogue was intending. It's not a terrible thing. It's a quirk of the dub. I just find that it's more noticeable in Adventure 2. And when I was compiling notes to make this video, I just noticed it really stand out around these sorts of episodes. So with that, we can move on to episode 11, Storm of Friendship. Tentomon finds the kids riding the rails, which is how the previous episode ended, and Matt asks Tentomon to go find Garurumon. Davis is really worried about hurting Agumon, but TK reminds him that they just need to get rid of the Dark Spiral. TK and Davis actually end up fighting in a parallel to Matt and Tai, giving the impression, by the way, that this is just how boys become friends. I can't really speak to that. I'm not sure that that's the best message to send, but whatever. The kids stumble upon the Digi-Egg of Friendship, and everyone tries to lift it unsuccessfully until Davis, but before he gets the egg, they are attacked by Flymon, who takes Patamon. Ken and the Dark Metal Greymon show up, and just before the Emperor gains control of Patamon, Garurumon shows up to save him. The Digimon all fight Metal Greymon, but to no avail. Davis observes the deep bond that the others have with their Digimon, and he learns that to be a better friend, he needs to step up and protect his friends. The egg is activated, and Vmon armor digivolves to a Rageramon, the Storm of Friendship. Change into power plays, and that's kind of a rarer one of the songs to be played, actually. Rageramon and Garurumon get rid of the Dark Spiral, and the team recovers Agumon. He and Tai have a tearful reunion, and it's very sweet. The episode ends back in the real world in the computer lab, where everyone openly accepts Davis as being their friend. Episode 12, The Good, the Bad, and the Digi. This one is fun, and I had a sense of deja vu while watching it, like maybe I caught this on TV back in the day and vaguely remember it. Unsure, but it starts with Sora, who receives a call from Biyomon during her tennis practice, and she then calls the others for help. Only Davis, Cody, and Yoli are able to help her, and they meet Sora, and together they all head to the digital world. They find themselves in an old western town, and I am just such a fan of like the western motifs and aesthetic, so I really enjoyed this. Inside a saloon of sorts, the kids meet Starmon. He gives them these mugs of welcome milk, and Sora asks him if he has seen Biyomon. Well, she's wanted in these here parts, and Starmon turns out to be under the influence of a dark ring. The kids try to run away, but are locked up by Starmon, where they reunite with Biyomon in the jail cell. Biyomon explains how she ended up there and that she was tricked by Starmon. In enters Deputymon, who does not have a dark ring. He frees the girls only to play cards with him. Notably, Hawkmon states that they are not a boy, but this is the only time that I remember him identifying that way, and he might have done that just to escape. Just something to note. Starmon has a standoff with Deputymon at one point, and while that is going on, the boys are able to get some food for their Digimon so they have strength to armor Digivolve. Flamedramon ends up beating Starmon, and the local control spire is destroyed. Deputymon at the end of this episode then forces all of our protagonists into playing more cards with Starmon as well. Episode 13, His Master's Voice. This episode introduces some important concepts, but we aren't fully aware of them at this point, so it can be kind of confusing up until this point. This episode focuses on Kari, who is acting very jumpy at school, and we hear Gatomon tell Patamon that Kari has been having a lot of bad dreams. TK notices this and is really worried about her. In class, he sees Kari glitch out and kind of begin to drift into this dark, foggy ocean world. She faints. She wanders off, and TK goes to look for her. We really see how much he cares about her this episode, which is nice. Kari tells him about the dark ocean world that she sees and the dark Digimon who want her to join them in their world. She wants to give up, and TK tells her that he cares too much about her to let anyone take her without a fight, which is really very touching, but he gets super embarrassed and leaves. Kari walks out to the beach, and Gatomon sees her glitch out and disappear, so she runs to get help. TK heads to the beach to find her while Kari is walking within the dark world. She encounters a group of Scubamon with dark spirals that somehow summoned Kari. I'm still kind of unclear on this. TK, Patamon, and Gatomon are able to get to the dark world, and Pegasusmon helps fight off the Airdramon that has appeared. But Kari doesn't have her D3, so Gatomon cannot armor Digivolve to help. Pegasusmon takes out the control spire, and we see Gatomon Digivolve into Anjouamon, which does not really make sense, especially as we later hear that the kids have lost their ability to ultimate Digivolve, so it's kind of confusing, but I do love to see Anjouamon. She takes care of business and also helps free the Scubamon, but they mutate and end up turning on Kari. They reference their Dark Master, who also senses her power, and they wanted her to be their queen. They warn her that the Master will come after her one day. That kind of ends that for now, and they all return to the real world. And whilst they are doing that, Kari tells TK that in response to what he had said earlier, she cares about him too. Episode 14, The Samurai of Sincerity. Izzy is in the computer lab and notices a Digiport had opened in America. Our Digidestined are out in the Digiworld looking for a new Digi-Egg, and they come across a restaurant owned by Digitamamon. The kids don't have the right money to pay for their meal, so he tries to get them to work it off. TK remembers hearing about this, about how this exact same thing happened to Joe and Matt in the original series, and out of the blue pops a new character, Michael, who appears with Mimi. He has his own partner Digimon, Betamon, and is a Digidestined himself. He actually has one of the original Digivices. In talking with Michael, it is revealed that Cody was on the plane that made an emergency landing during the whole Myotismon arc 3 years prior, and Davis states that he was also a part of that. He was held at the convention center. Yoli didn't have any direct encounters during that time, but she shares that she was involved sending emails during the battle against Diaboromon, which is honestly kind of wild to see referenced in the show, but it makes sense. They realize that they are all connected in these ways. Michael covers the group's bill, and Digitamamon claims to have changed from his previous henchman ways. The rest of this episode shows Yoli versus Mimi's reaction to all of this. Mimi always sees the best in others and believes that everyone can be friends, while Yoli is less trusting and a bit more combative. Yoli kind of compares herself to Mimi and specifically feels like guys would always choose Mimi and no one ever chooses her. A Gorillamon with a dark spiral attacks, and Digitamamon actually tries to protect them. Michael's Betamon then digivolves into Seadramon to take care of him, but needs Togemon's help. Digitamamon comes back and attacks them, and it's kind of confusing, but now he's against them. Mimi tries to prevent the group from hurting him, but he actually ends up pushing her. Yoli reveals her true feelings and gives a very sincere speech, and thus the Digi-Egg of Sincerity appears, and Hawkmon is able to armor digivolve into Shurimon, the Samurai of Sincerity, a very cool and honestly underrated Digimon. Shurimon is able to get the Dark Spiral out of Digitamamon's shell, and they all make up as the kids go back to their respective countries, but before they part, Michael asks Yoli out on a date to her pleasant surprise. What a day for Yoli. Episode 15, Big Trouble in Little Edo. A control spire pops up in a very traditionally Japanese-looking territory where Shogun Gekumon is the ruler. The Digimon of the area are controlled with dark rings, and also in this area, Ninjamon appears, and he ends up confronting Shurimon, and they have kind of a gentleman's battle throughout this episode. The kids are chased by Floramon and Mushroommon, and they end up hiding in the sewers, where they go to see Shogun Gekomon. Ninjamon slaps a dark spiral on him, and then Shogun Gekomon goes on this huge rampage. The kids take him on and get him to destroy the control spire, while Shurimon defeats Ninjamon. All are freed, and the episode ends well. Episode 16, 20,000 Digileagues Under the Sea. The kids are trapped deep underwater in an oil rig platform. They are being circled by a Mega Seadramon, so they can't even swim outside into the water. Cody is very frightened by the situation, as he apparently has ongoing nightmares about being trapped underwater. The kids end up finding an emergency ejection vehicle, and they make Cody take it despite his objections. Cody needs to make his way back to the real world to find Joe, as they need Ikakumon's help to escape. Cody ends up seeing his mom and grandfather, and his grandfather in this brief interaction says something about there's nothing worse than telling a lie. Again, Cody has this unnecessary moral guilt that's kind of thrust upon him. And he is now facing a huge dilemma, as he actually has to lie in order to get Joe out of class. Cody takes things so seriously in general, and yeah, I just wish that he could feel a bit more free. Joe tells Cody that it was okay to lie, as that was a real emergency, and in that situation it was okay. Ikakumon shows up to help the kids, and it's always a good day when Ikakumon appears. Joe and Cody show up in Waymon, which was a super pleasant surprise, and they save the kids, but before leaving the oil rig, Cody is having a really hard time accepting the Digi-Egg of Reliability, but with Joe's persuasion, he's able to get him to accept that, and Armadillomon armor digivolves to Submarimon, Guardian of the Seas. He has a really cool design in that Cody can actually ride inside of him, allowing him to travel within the water. Submarimon and Ikakumon destroy the Dark Spiral on Mega Seadramon, and the episode ends with this really beautiful scene of Submarimon showing Cody the ocean to help ease his fear, and it has one of my favorite scores playing in the background as well. Episode 17, Ghost of a Chance. This show surprises me in such pleasant ways sometimes, and this episode is a prime example. It just kept getting better and better. All of the Digidestined are planning to reunite on the anniversary of when they defeated Myotismon, which is August 1st, by the way. It has now been 4 years, according to TK, and even Mimi shows up for this. They are all in their summer casual clothes too, which is fun to see. TK heads over to Matt's, and here we notice the difference between the brothers' lives. Also, I'll take this opportunity to comment on their weird parent trap-esque dynamic of splitting up the kids. I'm not trying to judge anyone else's family dynamic, but I don't understand why Matt and TK can't live with the other parent sometimes. We do see TK interacting with their dad semi-regularly, but we almost never see Matt with their mother. In any event, it's really nice to just see the two brothers hang out together. Their dad returns home from work looking weary, but still hot, and he's going crazy due to chaos that's happening down at the TV station. He believes that it's haunted. He ends up putting on these recordings of buffaloes migrating to help him with stress, and seeing him do his little buffalo affirmations was a gift from God. The rest of the kids had also split up in groups, so some are wandering around and reminiscing, and others are figuring out how to open digiports from their own home computers. They all meet up again at the TV station, and all of a sudden, Gatomon rushes in. They get to the top of the station when the ghost appears, and it's Wizardmon. This is incredible. Wizardmon warns Gatomon of her great enemy, a darkness greater than the Digimon Emperor. He says that they cannot defeat him as they are now. They need to return the one who was wrapped in darkness to his true self. Kindness will release the golden radiance. As Wizardmon disappears again, Gatomon chases after him, and their goodbye is so sad. I have always been so emotionally affected by their friendship. Kari does her best to cheer Gatomon up, but the episode ends there. Episode 18, Run Yoli Run. Izzy and Cody come across the Digimon Emperor's base, and the younger kids had to plan to stay in the Digiworld as long as it takes to take down the base. So the older kids decide to cover for them, and they tell their parents that they're all going on a camping trip, but only some of the kids actually go. Izzy's mom won't let him go without a chaperone, so we end up getting Matt and TK's dad as our designated chaperone, which is obviously quite lovely. June ends up finding about the trip from Davis, and she really wants to join as she hears that Matt will be there. And it's actually really sad and rude AF of Matt because he brushes her off, and the kids like trick her and leave without her. As for our younger kids, Yoli is quite full of energy, or as Hawkmon says, she seems to be losing it. She's actually annoying, I hate to say. But she ends up getting into some trouble from her hyperactivity, which puts Hawkmon in danger, and the kids have to split up while Kari and Gatomon stay with Yoli and Hawkmon until he recovers, and the boys head out. It's nice to see the girls have a nice moment together because that relationship feels quite underdeveloped at this point. We learn that Yoli just wanted to prove her strength, but she knows she can't do it alone anymore. She describes to Hawkmon how she just can't stop once she makes up her mind, and she's very stubborn, etc., etc. And Hawkmon very sweetly replies that those traits that she's describing make Yoli who she is, and he likes her exactly as she is. Just a very nice message. Episode 19, An Old Enemy Returns. The kids spent the night in the Digiworld, and in the morning, TK and Cody, with Tentomon, split off to go find the Emperor. His base ends up being in the ocean near something called the Dark Pool. There is an evil emanating from it, and Ken wants to utilize its power. Cody gets inside the base, and TK goes to save him, but feels very affected by this evil whirlpool. Devimon appears inside the dark pool and warns Ken to be aware of the darkness. TK is super affected by seeing Devimon. We've learned that he still really blames himself for when Angemon sacrificed himself against Devimon all of those years ago. He legitimately has like PTSD about it. At this point, Ken launches Chimeramon, a Digimon he's created over the past few episodes, combining aspects of different powerful Digimon. Halcymon and Nefertimon do their best against him, while TK encounters the Emperor. He actually kind of roasts the hell out of him, and I kind of like Dark TK, actually. They end up getting in a fist fight, as Patamon and Wormmon mirror them in their fighting, and the kids all manage to escape and reunite after that. Meanwhile, we see that June in the real world has gotten her grandparents to drive her to the campsite after she missed the bus to get there. She is really desperate to get there, and I really do just feel bad for her. Episode 20, The Darkness Before Dawn. Chimeramon is on a rampage, and Ken is just wreaking havoc on the digital world. Matt, Izzy, and Ty communicate with the kids, and they all work together and plan a way to stop the Emperor and his base. We see that Ken is being kind of tormented by this evil, and he's losing his sanity ever more. Agumon, Gabumon, and Tentamon light oil on fire in order to stop the Emperor's base, and this allows the others a chance to sneak in. They encounter Chimeramon, and the armored Digimon try their best, but they are defeated and de-digivolved. We have an important moment as Ken recognizes the in-training Digimon from when he saw them in the real world at the soccer game. He orders Chimeramon to stop. The kids decide that they need to find the engine room in order to destroy the base, and Wormmon ends up helping them. Davis finds a golden Digi-Egg, and Vmon golden armor digivolves to Magnamon, who just says, "The balance of power has shifted." Very cool ending to this episode. Episode 21, The Crest of Kindness. Magnamon fights Chimeramon while the Digidestined confront Ken. They tell him that he needs to respect the Digimon, that he has a responsibility as a Digidestined, but he just doesn't listen. Wormmon makes an emotional appeal to Ken, as he's the one who knows the real Ken. Wormmon starts glowing as he gives his power to Magnamon, which allows him to defeat Chimeramon. Ken crashes out, and the kids tell him that the digital world is real. Ken had believed this only to be a video game, and he had no idea that these were like real lives that he was messing with. He begins to reckon with the horrors of his tirade and his sins. The Digimon Emperor outfit disintegrates bit by bit, and Ken cries out, kneeling in the desert until only his true self remains. It's a very powerful visual and scene. Ken then receives his crest of kindness as Gatomon realizes that this is what Wizardmon was trying to tell her. Wormmon and Ken hug, only for Wormmon to disappear, having used all of his energy to help Magnamon. Ken gets a flashback to the death of his brother, and he has a full breakdown where we learn that he basically used this Emperor BS as a way to escape and run away from his pain. The others are super, super gracious and tell Ken that it's not too late to make up for things. They tell him he has people that care about him, referencing his parents, and they really all want to help him. I really feel Ken's suffering as he wanders off on his own. Back in the real world, June finally meets up with the older boys, and the other kids enter the Digiport through Izzy's computer at the campsite, and they're all together. There isn't enough room for everyone in the van now, and Matt's dad is awesome and forces Matt to take the bus home with June, much to Matt's chagrin. They hear on the radio in the car on the way home that boy genius Ken Ichijoji has returned home. Episode 22, Davis Cries Wolfmon. The kids go to help restore the Digiworld after the havoc that Ken had caused, and we get a nice montage of all the kids working there. And TK hypothesizes that there must still be a threat to the Digiworld, as that's why they can still access it. Davis and Vmon are feeling unlucky in love, and they believe that they need to do better in order to impress Kari and Gatomon. Davis wants Vmon to digivolve into a champion in order to kind of rival Angemon, and he tricks Vmon into believing that he is in danger, which he hopes will trigger a Digivolution. They are attacked by a Tortamon, and eventually Vmon is able to successfully digivolve into his champion form, X-Vmon. Episode 23, Genesis of Evil. This episode is only about Ken, and in fact we don't even see another Digidestined throughout the entire thing. We start with him being asleep, and he's trying to find his heart. We learn about his older brother Sam, who he really looked up to. Sam was a genius, and his parents absolutely loved the attention that he had brought their family. Ken was neglected in comparison to Sam. One night, the brothers received a Digivice, and Ken visited the digital world as a young child. We see that Sam is kind of the worst and doesn't treat Ken very well all of the time, but it is very sad because he does pass away very young. Following the death of his brother, Ken receives a creepy email that urges him to visit the digital world. His Digivice turns dark and evil begins to take hold of him. In present day, his parents reflect on their shortcomings and how they might have affected their children in a negative way. They acknowledge that they failed as parents, and I'll just say that that takes a lot to admit. They want to make changes, and I think that's great. Ken wakes up with amnesia, essentially, and his parents apologize in a very touching scene. Present-day Ken returns to the digital world and ends up in the primary village where he looks for Wormmon's Digi-Egg. Ken's internal monologue that we hear as he continues to reckon with his actions, I just find so effective. Ken appeals for another chance to do his best. We flash back to when Ken and Wormmon first met all of those years ago, and Ken realizes that he's never actually really just been himself. He was always trying to be like Sam, and then he was dedicated to being the Emperor, which in a sense was emulating Sam. He decides to dedicate the rest of his life to being himself, the kind and gentle boy that Wormmon knew and believed in. This activates his crest, which enables him to find Wormmon's Digi-Egg. He hatches it, and we meet Leafmon, the baby form of Wormmon, and they have a very tearful reunion. Ken returns home to his parents, and they all reconcile, and his memory is back. Second chances all around, and Ken begins to make more peace with Sam's passing. This is one of the most emotional episodes of the series. Tears were flowing, I tell you what. Very, very good. Episode 24, If I Had a Tail Hammer. Ken is adjusting to living with his parents again, and we see at night a woman appear in his room, but she quickly leaves and we don't learn too much about her. The others are still helping reconstruct the Digiworld, and they discover that the control spires are still active in preventing regular Digivolving even without Ken's presence. Cody and Digimon are attacked by Thundermon, and Armadillomon is able to Digivolve to Ankylomon, his champion form. A mysterious new Digimon appears, saves Cody's life, and then destroys Thundermon. We learn that this is Wormmon's Digivolved form, who then leaves wordlessly with Ken. Episode 25, Spirit Needle. Davis talks to the others and tries to get them to accept asking Ken to be a part of their team. They're pretty much all against it except for TK, although Kari is kind of open to it. We see Ken at his school, and he is no longer the same high achiever that he once was. Davis tracks him down and does his best to connect with him, and I totally love this scene. TK was watching them from afar and tells Patamon that he believes everyone deserves a second chance, and he forgives Ken. This forgiveness is definitely warranted, especially given the information we learn later on. But even without knowing about the Dark Spore's influence, these kids are so gracious and accepting and optimistic and forgiving, and it's really heartwarming. TK also says that he just hopes that Ken will somehow be able to forgive himself. We see more of Yoli's siblings, and while they don't really know what's going on with her, they do recommend that she forgives whatever guy has been upsetting her. Mimi also returns this episode with a groovy new hairstyle. She is hanging out with some baby Digimon with Palmon, and Palmon spots the woman that was in Ken's room last episode. This woman sends a Golemon to destroy the town, and all of the others show up to help. This actually feels like a pretty high-stakes situation, and the Digimon do their best to stop him. The kids don't want to destroy Golemon, as Yoli and Cody especially are very against destroying any Digimon, which I don't recall this being something that the kids cared about in the original series. I feel like they did destroy many Digimon that were not influenced by any sort of gear or ring or anything, but this quandary with not wanting to destroy any Digimon comes up a lot in this series. Ken and Stingmon, who is the champion form of Wormmon, shows up to help, and as they show up, Palmon wakes up and informs them all that Golemon actually isn't a Digimon, and that the mysterious woman created him from a control spire. Yoli realizes at this point that Ken has changed, and he didn't just mercilessly kill the Thundermon from the previous episode, and as she realizes this, she is able to cause Hawkmon to digivolve into Aquilamon, who then, with Stingmon, destroys the Golemon. Ken formally apologizes to the group, but is still very resistant to joining them. Yoli sends him a really sweet email thanking him and saying that she can't wait for the day that he decides to join them. Episode 26, United We Stand. Ken continues to be really hard on himself, and Wormmon continues to be super supportive and amazing. The woman in red uses her hair as a spirit needle to create a new Control Spire Digimon, but the kids make quick work of him. Cody continues to be very distrustful of Ken, and Davis explains that he really trusts Ken and that when he saw the golden digi-egg, it helped him believe in the goodness of Ken. Izzy sends the kids to Ken's old base as he got a notification, so to speak, that it's about to explode, and the base is super unstable without the crest of kindness. We learn that the mysterious woman has been using Ken, and that the control spires weren't even his idea. She used Ken's pain and guilt to control him. Izzy talks to Wormmon on the phone, which is kind of funny, to get Ken to meet the others in the Digiworld. And at the base, the mysterious woman creates a very powerful control spire Digimon. All of the champion Digimon try their best, but they just can't defeat it. We see Wormmon's Digivolution for the first time, and Davis actually slaps Ken to get him out of his head so they can focus on the fight, and that connects the two, allowing XVmon and Stingmon to DNA Digivolve together into Paildramon. My mind was blown upon seeing this. I did not know this was a thing. Episode 27, Fusion Confusion. Paildramon fights the Okuamon, who was the Spire Digimon, while the others run to the base. Ken returns the crest, shutting down the reactor, but the base is still about to blow. The kids make their way to the reactor's core, and TK remembers this feeling of evil from the Dark Whirlpool. Kari shares that this is also what the Dark Ocean world felt like. Ken states that it's a doorway that leads to the world of darkness, and he has been surrounded by this energy ever since he entered the digital world. Paildramon defeats the Okuamon and goes to save the kids, sealing off the doorway to darkness. He then destroys the base for good. Paildramon reverts back to its baby forms, and we meet Chibumon, Vmon's baby form, for the first time, and of course we see Leafmon again. Ken is feeling very unworthy of friendship with the others, but Davis tries to reassure him. Ken needs more time, and he heads off on his own. The next day, the kids meet up with Izzy, who drops some lore. He explains DNA digivolving and references Omnimon. We learn some new information that Genai had called the original Digidestined back to the digital world after defeating Apocalypmon. The kids had to release the power of their crests, which spread out to protect the digital world from darkness. However, this now means that the Digimon can no longer digivolve into their ultimate forms. Hope is not entirely gone, though, as DNA Digimon fight similarly to an ultimate. Episode 28, The Insect Master's Trap. Demi-Vmon and Davis describe to the others how connected they felt to their counterparts whilst DNA digivolved. So, also noting that everyone now seems to understand that the white-haired woman's name is Arukenimon, which is correct, but she doesn't ever tell them that yet, and they don't learn that until next episode, so that's kind of annoying, but it is what it is. They all meet Arukenimon at this Giga house, which is a gigantic house. Ken and Wormmon are also there, and the gang splits up with Ken, Davis, and Cody as one team, and Yoli, Kari, and TK as the other. Both groups are attacked by different swarms of Digimon, and we have a sequence where Cody and Submarimon save Ken's life, and Cody makes a point of telling him that now they're even for Ken having saved him from Thundermon. Arukenimon is playing a flute that ends up controlling Stingmon and Digmon as they realize it affects insect Digimon. I personally would not have realized that Digmon is an insect, but I suppose that he is. Davis, Cody, and Ken end up stuck in a web surrounded by evil Digimon. Episode 29, Arukenimon's Tangled Web. The boys work together to turn on the giant AC, which blows the Dokugamon, who was chasing them on the web, away from them, and they escape and hide in a drawer. They believe if they can alter the sound of the flute, it will release the insect Digimon from Arukenimon's control. Therefore, they contact Yoli, who, with Kari and TK's help, remixes the flute sounds with the giant computer. Their plan works, and Arukenimon attacks them. At this point, she is revealed to be a Digimon, and she morphs forms and introduces herself. She is an ultimate level Digimon. At this point, XVmon and Stingmon DNA digivolve to Paildramon to fight her, and with the others' help, they trap her. She tells them that they don't even understand the purpose of the control spires, and Mummymon appears to save Arukenimon, and together those two escape. Episode 30, Ultimate Antihero. We open to Arukenimon and Mummymon, and it's important to note that Mummymon is infatuated with Arukenimon, and that dynamic comes into play quite a bit. She does not seem to reciprocate these feelings, though. Meanwhile, Yoli and Davis try to get Cody and Ken to bond and work together, and we see that Armadillomon and Wormmon are getting along very well, but the human boys are still a bit icy. Cody's stubborn nature is very evident here. Arukenimon and Mummymon show up, and she uses like 100 control spires in order to create the most powerful Digimon that she has made yet, and we meet Black War Greymon, who actually is a very interesting character. The champion Digimon aren't strong enough, so Yoli goes to track down Ken to help, and he refuses, so she slaps him. There's a lot of slaps and punches amongst friends in this series, and I don't endorse that, but desperate times, I suppose. They head back to the others, and Paildramon enters the fight. The kids lose quite badly, they're very injured, and Black War Greymon refuses to take orders from Arukenimon, and he takes off on his own to find a worthy opponent. Episode 31, Opposites Attract. Black War Greymon ominously is tramping through the Digiworld, whilst Arukenimon and Mummymon track him down. The kids are discussing things in the computer lab, and Kari shows care and compassion towards Black War Greymon. Yoli begins internally comparing herself to Kari, and the kids head to the digital world. They end up in the spot where Gatomon lost her tail ring, and so the kids split up into groups to find it. Ken is also nearby, and he screams in pain as he senses the dark ocean, and so Kari and Yoli run to catch up with him. The three of them end up glitching into the dark ocean world. Yoli feels ignored as Kari and Ken are talking, and so she storms away, but immediately regrets her overreaction. She sees something at the bottom of a cliff, which she thinks is Gatomon's tail ring, and she ends up falling off the cliff with Kari falling after her. Here we go with the slaps again, because Kari slaps Yoli to stop her from crashing out. Kari apologizes and tells Yoli she just seems to bring out the worst in her, possibly due to the fact that they're so different. Kari reveals that she's envious of Yoli's open and honest nature. Kari herself keeps it all buried deep inside so that she doesn't bother or hurt anyone else. Kari realizes that she and Ken are both similar in this way, and they keep too much inside, which makes them vulnerable to the darkness. Their Digimon help them reach the top of the cliff, and they reunite with Ken. Kari and Ken then both see the dark ocean, but Yoli does not at first. Yoli hypothesizes that things are starting to feel more off because the powers guarding the digital world are slipping. The kids are attacked by Blossommon, and Stingmon and Aquilamon take them on. Poor Kari loses her grip and feels that she is taken by the darkness again. Yoli slaps her again, and the slaps are getting a bit out of hand. She makes Kari feel better, and they bond enough for Aquilamon and Gatomon to DNA digivolve into Sylphimon, who makes quick work of Blossommon. Sylphimon has a really interesting design. I had no idea how combining Aquilamon and Gatomon would look, but I think this is a pretty good way to do it. After the fight, we see Salomon and meet the baby form of Hawkmon, Perurumon. They reunite with the other boys, and TK tells Kari that he was worried he really lost her for good this time. She tells him not to worry because she's not going to be fighting the darkness alone anymore. Episode 32, If I Only Had a Heart. We see Black War Greymon leaving a trail of beat-up Digimon as he searches for his worthy opponent. He is conscious and aware of himself, and he feels a void inside that nothing can fill. Meanwhile, Mummymon and Arukenimon go search for something called a Destiny Stone. If you thought this would be a slap-free episode, you would be wrong, because we see June slapping Davis during some sibling banter. Black War Greymon has this moment where he observes this tiny flower that he feels kind of an affinity towards, and he defends it from a Mammothmon who was about to step on it. He philosophizes on why he would even care enough to do so. He ends up conversing with it and contrasts their differences, a real living flower versus an artificial life form. Black War Greymon is the epitome of emo. and he steps on the flower and says, "Why does my heart ache when the truth is my heart doesn't even exist?" Arukenimon and Mummymon create Nightmon in order to destroy the Destiny Stone that they find. The kids show up, and Nefertimon tells them that it's trouble if the stone's destroyed. Our heroes do their best to protect the stone, and at this time, Black War Greymon stumbles upon Agumon, and they have this really nice and compelling conversation. Agumon is super kind and friendly to him, and they discuss the nature of existence. Agumon offers Black War Greymon his friendship, and he accepts, and as they go to shake hands, Black War Greymon starts to feel a pain, and he shows up at the Destiny Stone and destroys it. Episode 33, A Chance Encounter. Yoli is on her school trip in Kyoto this episode, and this does confirm for us too, I think, that she is in a different grade from the other kids, as she's the only one on this trip. Izzy is watching Poromon for her, and we see those two hanging out with Ken and Leafmon as they match wits as whiz kids. In this conversation, Izzy tells Ken that there are actually many Digidestined all around the world. Poromon is kind of losing strength, so Ken decides to take both his Digimon and Poromon back to the Digiworld. And we cut back to Yoli, who spots Black War Greymon in the sky in Kyoto. He destroys another Destiny Stone in the Digiworld, thus creating warp disruptions. Apemon appears in the real world, and Ken and Stingmon show up to send him back through the Digiport. Ken hands off Poromon to Yoli and then promptly leaves. Yoli is then approached by two men who seem to know all about Digimon. We meet Professor Takanuchi, who teaches folklore in Tokyo but is in Kyoto for research, and he is also Sora's father, which is crazy. And he's actually kind of fine too. The other man is said to be Joe's brother Jim, and as I mentioned, they combine two brothers into one, so this is the Franken Jim. He actually studies under the professor, and they both know who Yoli is. Yoli is like, this is super weird, but okay. Sora's dad is apparently always traveling and never home, but Sora had told him all about the Digimon, and when she first returned back from the digital world, their family grew closer. I really like that he comments on Sora and her mother's relationship here, as that was something that was really important in the original series. Though I do think he needs to be getting his booty back home and actually spending time with his daughter and wife? I don't know. Regardless, he explains that Kyoto is essentially very close to the spirit world and perhaps also has that connection to the digital world. Sora's dad has many theories about magical creatures and Digimon, and it's pretty interesting, and if I was a student at the university, I would take his class. Shurimon ends up taking care of another Digimon that appears, and Yoli is able to send that one back to the digital world as well before returning back to her class. Episode 34, Destiny in Doubt. Black War Greymon continues to seek out answers to his question about his existence and continues to go after the Destiny Stones. The kids realize that if the digital world is off kilter, it also affects all other worlds as well. Izzy shows up, and Yoli gives him a little souvenir, which I like, and he upgrades the D3s so that they can track down Black War Greymon. They find him destroying another Destiny Stone, and when he does so, this creature appears in the sky for a moment. Black War Greymon believes that this is his foe, and in order to draw him out, he needs to keep destroying Destiny Stones. TK gets really angry at the situation in general, and Cody begins to kind of observe and psychoanalyze him. He's seen two different sides to TK. The normal, really nice guy, and then this angry, really angry boy. Cody wonders how he'll be able to DNA digivolve with TK when they have these very different personalities. We actually see TK having nightmares, again feeling the guilt and fear from when Anjumon sacrificed himself years ago. TK wakes up in a panic, and it's actually a really cute scene. TK sleeps next to Patamon, and he sees Patamon's there sleeping, and he just smiles and is happy that he's safe. The next day in the digital world, the kids split up, and Cody and TK hear from Gabumon that Agumon told him that Black War Greymon actually does have a heart. TK gets pissed and says they have to destroy him anyway, even if he does have a heart, it's been corrupted by darkness. They all end up at the next Destiny Stone, with Black War Greymon set to destroy it. Anjumon takes him on, but ends up getting hurt, thus triggering TK's trauma. The Destiny Stone's power allows Angemon to digivolve into Magna Angemon, which is so hype. He opens a gate of destiny, and I really thought this was going to do Black War Greymon in. Unfortunately, he destroys the stone, spots the creature in the sky again, and takes off to find yet another stone to destroy. Episode 35, Cody Takes a Stand. We open to the destruction of yet another Destiny Stone, and in the real world, Davis invites Ken over for a sleepover, and Yoli and Kari go to hang out with them for a bit too. Ken's mom is really happy to hear about Ken's friend, and it's just like a really sweet moment. His mom really goes through a lot, actually. Cody goes to see Matt to discuss his worries about TK. Matt tells him that TK is still really affected by their battle with Devimon, and in this conversation, Matt stresses that the importance of life outweighs the darkness. This is a really nice Matt moment, and I feel like I was maybe a bit hard on him earlier, but he's great. The next day, we see a Destiny Stone underwater, which is being protected by Ikakumon and Submarimon. All of the Digimon do their best, but Black War Greymon is too strong. Cody stands up to him and makes an appeal, and Black War Greymon pauses for a moment as Cody reminds him of that flower and of his heart. Unfortunately, he still destroys the stone, and at the end of the episode, we get a really nice moment between TK and Cody where they just appreciate the preciousness of life. Episode 36, Stone Soup. Arukenimon and Mummymon, who have been following Black War Greymon this entire time, arrive at a Chinese restaurant run by Tapirmon and Digitamamon. They love the soup. The kids are drawn there as well, resulting in a fight. Arukenimon and Mummymon escape, and the kids make some food to eat to regain their strength so they'll be able to digivolve. Arukenimon and Mummymon find a soup hot spring that was the soup from the restaurant. I don't really know, the whole soup thing confuses me a bit, but Digitamamon tries to stop them to no avail. The final Destiny Stone arises from the spring, and Black War Greymon arrives, as do the Digidestined. Angemon and Ankylomon DNA digivolve to Shakuamon, joining Paildramon and Sylphimon in the fight. Shakuamon's design is really cool and also not what I was expecting. Episode 37, Kyoto Dragon. This is a lore drop episode. The battle for the final Destiny Stone commences, and Arukenimon and Mummymon show up, but Digitamamon and Tapirmon kind of take care of them. The kids use their D3s to try to move and hide the Destiny Stone, and this causes the mysterious Digimon to appear, and he confronts Black War Greymon. We learn that his name is Azulonmon, and he's a digital world guardian. He tells everyone that the control spires were built to seal his power away. Arukenimon reveals that her plan was to build as many control spires as possible in order to disrupt the power and the balance of the digital world, and she used Ken to do so. Azulonmon continues to talk to Black War Greymon, telling him that every life has a purpose, and the circumstances of their birth don't matter. I love this, and I'm pretty sure Mewtwo has that exact same line in one of the Pokemon movies. He also tells him that it's up to him to find out what his life meaning is, and no one else is going to tell him that. Black War Greymon expresses gratitude towards Azulonmon, happy to know that his life does have meaning. He's still really emo though, and leaves to be alone. Azulonmon now addresses the Digidestined and tells them that he is one of the 4 Mega Digimon who protect the balance of the Digiworld. He is actually the Eastern Guardian, thus corresponding with Kyoto. The Guardians were sealed away by the Dark Masters, and even after the Dark Masters were defeated, the seal remained. This is apparently why they needed the power of the crests in order to break the seal. He also states that armor digivolving is actually an ancient form of digivolving, which is pretty cool, and the new Digimon were chosen specifically as they are some of the few Digimon that possess the power to armor digivolve. He also shares that the crest of kindness was hidden by the powers of darkness, so that's why it had to be rebuilt into the Digi-Egg of Miracles, which if you recall is what caused Vmon to golden armor digivolve a few episodes back. Azulonmon will replant Seeds of Light to rebuild the Destiny Stones, but that will take time. Cody then says that they need to destroy all traces of darkness, but TK responds with some mad wisdom, saying that wherever there is light, there is also darkness. One cannot exist without the other. What really matters is the light inside, and to keep that hope inside lit. Azulonmon tells them that the crests of hope and light are a bit different as well, and he warns them that even with Black War Greymon gone, the threat still exists. There's actually a greater evil than Arukenimon and Mummymon. They're actually being controlled. Episode 38, A Very Digi Christmas. Ken is really shy and nervous to ask all the other kids to come to a Christmas party he's having, but they're all super excited to go. Cody and Ken have a nice moment when he invites him, and we can see that they've resolved their negative feelings. We get a Matt's dad sighting too, which is fun. And we see after TK's mom is talking with Davis's father, she is approached by a mysterious man, Mr. Obikawa. He investigated the Heighton View Terrace incident all those years back, and he makes these creepy comments about watching out for her sons, and he's just a very ominous presence. The younger kids bring the original rookie Digimon to the real world as a Christmas gift for the older kids, which I love to see. They also send Palmon to America to reunite with Mimi. Matt's band is having a concert, and so we see all of the kids go to see him. Before it starts, we get a moment where Tai asks Sora to go to the concert with him, but she reveals that she's actually interested in Matt. Tai is really cool about this, and he actually encourages Sora, and we see all of the older kids and their Digimon cheering on Matt during the concert, with June also in attendance. And I gotta admit, he looks pretty cool. The concert is interrupted by Digimon that attack, and they're attacking all over the city. The younger kids show up to help, and they destroy a control spire which appeared in the real world. We get all of our original champions too, which we love to see, and together they're able to send all the other Digimon back through the Digiport. Ken thinks it's Arukenimon behind this, as she can travel freely between the two worlds. We see the kids all enjoying time with their Digimon, and the episode ends with us learning that there are control spires popping up all over the world, and Digiports are also opening up globally. Episode 39, Draymon Power. The recap of this episode, given before the episode starts, is by Tai, and I just wanted to comment because it was fun, and he says, "Hi guys, it's Tai, long time no see." I just thought that was cute. But anyway, the actual plot, the kids all go to meet up at Izzy's, except for Davis, who heads over to Tomachi to go help Ken. The militaries of the world roll out to confront the monsters, and we learn that any computer data that had been stored on the attacks from 4 years prior has been deleted. Azulonmon gives Genai, who is now in his younger form, a Digicore. Izzy gets hundreds of emails from other Digidestined, and this is when we learn that apparently any child who had an encounter with a Digimon is considered a Digidestined, meaning that there are thousands upon thousands of them. Arukenimon and Mummymon confront Ken as Obikawa watches. Raydramon destroys the control spire, and back at Izzy's we see Genai physically appear. He gives them the power of the Digicore, powering the Digimon and their Digivices. Hyildramon receives the power and is able to Mega Digivolve to Imperial Dramon. This was another mind blown, I had no idea this was going to happen moment for me, and I really like it. Imperial Dramon claims that he is stronger than any other Digimon. They send the Digimon that were attacking back to the Digiworld, and then Imperial Dramon destroys all of the Japanese control spires. Genai reveals that he and his counterparts have been deleting data that people collected on the Digiworld in order to keep it hidden. Genai has counterparts in New York, Hong Kong, Moscow, Mexico City, Sydney, and Paris. The kids are going to split up in pairs and then head to these destinations in order to join with the local Digidestined to lead the battle and return all of the Digimon back to the Digiworld. Before they leave, Izzy's mom shows up and gives Izzy some snacks, which is super sweet. We love that supportive queen. Matt and TK's dad also rolls up to wish them luck, and this is like pretty hype, I'm not gonna lie. Episode 40, Digimon World Tour Part 1. Our teams are as follows. Tai and TK are in Paris, Izzy and Kari are in Hong Kong, Joe and Cody in Sydney, Sora and Yoli in Moscow, Matt and Ken in Mexico City, and Davis and Mimi in New York. Imperial Dramon drops everyone off that he can and then lands in Miami. From there, Davis, Matt, and Ken meet up with Michael, and Matt and Ken head to Mexico while Davis and Michael head to New York to connect with Mimi. Fun fact, Michael's dad is apparently a Hollywood star who flies planes, and Davis kind of fanboys. Mimi, Davis, and Michael connect with Benjamin, one of Genai's counterparts. All of the various Genais we see look identical, by the way. He shares the power of Azulonmon's Digicore, allowing Palmon to Digivolve all the way to Lilymon, which we love to see. Meanwhile, more Digimon and Digidestined all head to New York City. We meet some of the new Digidestined, and they all work together to stop the rogue Digimon and send them back through the Digiport. We then see Mimi's parents catch up to where she is because they've been worried about her with all the monster attacks, and the scene in New York kind of ends there. Cut to Hong Kong, where we see three Digidestined brothers, and Kari and Izzy arrive with Anjouamon and Mega Kabuterimon. Their Genai's name is Jackie, and together they all work together to round up the Digimon of the area. This one actually has kind of a tense moment where a Digidestined girl from India is prevented from crossing into China by the Chinese military. So the others go and find this diplomatic way to explain the situation by using one of the brothers' Octomons to write messages with ink to communicate to the Chinese army. The general eventually lets them pass through, and Kari and Izzy are able to send all of the Digimon back through the Digiport. Back in Japan, we see Mummymon approaching a lone boy. Episode 41, Digimon World Tour Part 2. Ikakumon and Digmon destroy a control spire in Sydney, and we see Joe and Cody meet their Genai counterpart, the Aussie accented Hogan. They encounter a Digidestined boy, Derek, and his partner, Crabmon. Together, they all head to the Great Barrier Reef to destroy the last control spire of the area, and that's where the other Digidestined are going to bring the remaining Digimon to send back as well. Before this happens, there's a fight with Scorpiomon, and Ikakumon digivolves to Zudomon, and with Submarimon and Crabmon's digivolve form, they are able to take him out. And that kind of ends the Aussie chapter of things. Our next team is TK and Tai, which I think is an interesting combination. TK's grandfather lives in Paris, so he's going to go pick the boys up and help take them throughout the city. It's kind of cool to learn more about TK and Matt's family in this way, and I assume that this is their mother's father. They pass by Versailles, where the gates are open and TK's grandfather rushes inside. He's a bit overzealous, shall we say. Inside the palace, they find some Digimon feasting, as well as a Digidestined girl being held captive. Greymon and Anjouamon take care of the Digimon, and the guys free the girl. Both Tai and TK, by the way, appear to be a little smitten with her, or at least they find her quite cute. And after that, more Digimon appear, and we see Magna Anjouamon and Metal Greymon take care of business. Back in Japan, we see yet another lone child being approached, this time by Arukenimon. I also wanted to note in this episode, Let's Kick It Up plays, and I could be incorrect here, but I think this is the last time one of those songs plays. As I mentioned earlier, the soundtracks kind of fade out, and I believe this is the last time we hear one of those songs. Episode 42, Digimon World Tour Part 3. Stingmon and Garurumon destroy a control spire in Mexico, and Matt and Ken head to some Mayan ruins where there are Digimon gathering. I really love this pairing, as I feel, in ways that I can't fully describe, that Ken and Matt seem to have some commonalities, and I just like to see them kind of have this bonding time. Jose, who is Genai's Mexican counterpart, helps them get into the ruins, which are being guarded by some security. Once inside, they meet a local Digidestined girl, Rosa, who is utterly infatuated with Ken. Rosa and Wormmon actually fight for Ken's attention and affection throughout this episode, and they kind of have a contentious relationship. I don't love this aspect of things, in full honesty, and it kind of makes me uncomfortable, but it's fine. They find the Digimon and lure them outside in order to protect the ruins from getting destroyed in the fight, and we see Where Garurumon for this. Rosa's Gatsumon gets an actual Digivolution sequence into Monochromon, which is cool. They send the Digimon through the Digiport and take Rosa home, and before this sequence ends, Wormmon and Rosa do end things on a positive note, which is nice. Cut to Moscow, where Sora and Yoli are doing their best to communicate with the local Digidestined, but they cannot break the language barrier. I want to note that in response to this situation, Sora thinks, oh, this is so embarrassing, I'm not going to tell Tai, which I just found interesting that she thought of him. I like the fact that their friendship is still really important despite the Matt and Sora romance, which we honestly see very little of, but more to come. Yoli and Sora figure out a way to communicate via using Russian food names, and they're able to destroy the control spire and send home the Digimon of the area. We get our Garurumon sighting in this as well, which is nice. The kids are about to have dinner when Elia, the Genii of the area, brings the girls to Siberia. Imperial Dramon shows up to help them, and everyone is together except for Kari and Izzy. The girls are upset that they didn't get to eat the Russian food and hang out with the Digidestined, including the boy Yuri, and we get a slight jealous reaction out of Matt about that. There is a montage of all the international kids enjoying Christmas, which I liked, though I do find it strange that TK's grandfather is having drinks alone with the young French Digidestined girl. The episode ends with Arukenimon and Mummymon abducting a young boy. Episode 43, Invasion of the Daemon Corps. The kids all arrive home and we see various scenes play out of the kids with their families. TK has a conversation with his mother about the Digimon and she shares about her encounter with Oikawa. Cody asks his grandfather about what happened to his father. We learn that he was a policeman who sacrificed himself in order to save someone else. Tai and Kari also have a serious conversation about the fact that they may need to destroy real Digimon. Ken has a memory from years ago when he was first in the Digi world with Wormmon, and he remembers hurting his neck. We see news reports that show that there are many missing children in the area, and then we have the arrival of Marine Devimon, Lady Devimon, and Skull Satamon as they attack the city. The kids fight in response, but these evil Digimon are different than others. The original rookies are sent back to the Digi world in order to regain their strength, but first they give their power to Imperial Dramon, who mode changes to fighter mode, which is a cool new thing to see. His design changes and he becomes bipedal and his power increases. Imperial Dramon is able to destroy Skull Satamon, and a mysterious Digimon named Daemon appears and demands that Ken comes with him. He explains that Ken has a dark spore, which is the memory that Ken had earlier in this episode. It entered his neck when he was a child, and Daemon wants the spore. Arukenimon and Mummymon show up and demand that Ken actually go with them, and she uses the missing children as leverage in order to get Ken to do as she says. They drive off with Ken and the missing children. Episode 44, Dark Sun, Dark Spore. Joe's brother picks up the younger kids, and they pursue Arukenimon and Ken. Oikawa is in the back of the truck with Ken, and it's revealed that he lured the kids in with the promise that they could be just like Ken Ichijoji. Oikawa had been at Ken's brother's funeral, and he actually worked with Ken's father. He was the one who sent the creepy email back to Ken back in the day, and explains that there is a dark spore inside of Ken. Oikawa also tells Ken that Arukenimon and Mummymon are essentially just his assistants. He extracts the spore from Ken and implants it in all of the other kids. Dark spores are said to make people better at sports and school, as was the case with Ken, but then darkness grows inside and takes hold of them. Meanwhile, we see Sylphimon take on Lady Devimon and actually ending up destroying her, which really affects Yoli, but she does get over it as it was the right thing to do. Shakuamon fights Marine Devimon and also ends him, and Cody takes it a little bit harder than Yoli does. Our last scene of the episode is Daemon appearing in front of the truck, and Davis is in pursuit of them as well. Episode 45, The Dark Gate. Daemon and Oikawa face off as Daemon wants the dark spore as well. Davis shows up to rescue Ken, and we see Shakuamon, Sylphimon, and Imperial Dramon fight against Daemon. He opens a portal to the digital world, and Kari has an idea to send him to the Dark Ocean, and Ken is able to open a dark gate with his D3 in order to do so. There's a really touching moment when the kids rally around Ken and just basically reinforce the idea that they love and accept him. They seal Daemon away successfully, and we see Oikawa telling the missing children that he will call them back to this place one day. Then he escapes. The police arrive and help the missing kids, and Ken returns home and tells his parents about Digimon and introduces them to Wormmon. At the end of the episode, Oikawa states his plan to harvest the power of the Dark Spore to defeat the Digidestined and rule the digital world. Episode 46, Duel of the War Greymon. Ken's father finds a file on Oikawa at his office and he shows the kids. Again, I'll just say how I love that the Digidestined families are so involved and are so supportive. Oikawa has an interesting comment. This is kind of a throwaway line, but he says something on humans that to them, Digimon and UFOs are the exact same thing, something they are afraid to admit exists. Again, that has no bearing on the plot. I just thought it was kind of an interesting comment. TK's mother sees the image of Oikawa that Ken's father got from the office and confirms that that was the man that she encountered the other day. She has also done some research and got a list of the missing children. We learn here that she is a newspaper reporter, and that made me think that that's perhaps how Matt and TK's parents met, as they're both like in news-related jobs. The Digidestined go to save the children from the dark spores, but they have already started to take root, and Oikawa is the only one who can extract them. Black War Greymon shows up in the real world and tracks down Oikawa and crew, and it's at this point that Oikawa reveals that he created Arukenimon and Mummymon by turning his own DNA into data, thus also being responsible for the creation of Black War Greymon, who is very interested to learn that he is a product of the real rather than the digital world. He still wants to destroy Oikawa, as he calls him a foreign object not belonging to either world. Tai and Kari had retrieved Agumon from the digital world, as he received more power from Azulonmon, and he may be able to now defeat Black War Greymon. They show up, Agumon warp digivolves to War Greymon, and takes on Black War Greymon, as they need to keep Oikawa alive in order to remove the dark spores. Oikawa escapes despite the other Digidestined trying to chase him and track him down. War Greymon makes another appeal and tells Black War Greymon that they can be friends and work together. Black War Greymon believes his life is meant to be filled with fighting and struggle, and this is so sad and frustrating to see. He's choosing pain and suffering when he doesn't have to, and I know people like this in my actual life, and it's very difficult to watch people needlessly suffer and double down on said suffering. Anyway, so Imperial Dramon joins the fight, and together with War Greymon, they stop Black War Greymon, who then expresses that he wishes they would have just outright destroyed him completely. We get an extremely beautiful scene where Wormmon, Agumon, and Vmon tell Black War Greymon to release self-pity. His life can have meaning despite the struggle, and that even a simple warring life can be filled with joy. He's still hesitant and leaves, though he does begin to change his thinking. Episode 47, Black War Greymon's Destiny. Cody's grandfather sees Armadillomon, and it turns out that he already knows about the digital world. He tells Cody that his father used to speak of and interact with the Digiworld as a child. One of the children's dark spores is ready to sprout, and while Cody is on the lookout in front of her house, Oikawa shows up. He recognizes Cody's family name and leaves as he reminisces about Cody's father, who we learn he had a very strong connection with. Cody's father, Hiroki, was Oikawa's best friend and his only friend ever since childhood. As we learn more about their relationship, I have to say that in some ways I read this as Oikawa potentially having unrequited romantic love towards Hiroki. I'm not going to force that narrative. It's also completely legitimate that they were just best friends. But the way that he reacts to everything, the depth of his feelings, etc., it just really kind of points to this. I'll also take this opportunity to discuss how Arukenimon and Mummymon are representative of Oikawa himself. So in some ways we could read this kind of as his divine masculine and divine feminine sides. And I think the personality traits of the two Digimon reflect parts of Oikawa, and these could even further support this theory of Oikawa's love for Hiroki. Oikawa is kind of having a mental breakdown, and then the dark spore in one of the children, her name is Noriko, sprouts, and he shows up to go harvest it. Cody confronts him, reminding Oikawa of his fallen friend, and the dark flower fills him with dark energy right as Black War Greymon shows up to stop him. As Hawkmon says, this is getting extremely complicated. Black War Greymon tells Oikawa that power will never rid him of the feelings of loneliness he feels deep inside. Cody's grandfather also shows up and talks to Oikawa, recalling how he and his son had spent so much time playing together and discussing the digital world. After Hiroki's death, Oikawa just completely lost himself due to grief, and Cody's grandfather says that he has never seen someone so sad in his life. He wishes he could have helped him. He then offers his friendship and wants to connect with Oikawa over their memories of Hiroki. We see the real Oikawa is present and aware for a moment, but he is then completely taken over by the dark energy. Black War Greymon steps in and seems to recognize that someone is controlling Oikawa, thus changing everything. Black War Greymon was affected by the dark energy and is beginning to fade. In his final move, as a gift to the others and as a way to fulfill his self-created destiny, he uses himself to seal the Heightened View Terrace gate to the digital world and disappears forever. We end with Agumon thanking Black Wargreymon, saying he's a true friend and will never be forgotten. Episode 48, Oikawa's Shame. The Digidestined, both old and new, are staking out the Darkspore children. Tai and Sora follow Noriko, the girl whose spore had previously bloomed, and again, I'll say I love the Tai and Sora friendship. Izzy even asks Matt if them being together bothers him, but he replies that Tai is his best friend and he also completely trusts Sora. We love that. Izzy's mom shows up and continues to be supportive. She brings them snacks and tells him that she just wants to help like all the other parents. And I want to note that while she says that, we see the other parents on screen, and for the first time we see Sora's parents together working with Jim. The kids realize that the children's parents may neutralize the power of the dark spores, as is what happened with Ken. Oikawa and crew show up to retrieve the children, and he reveals that Ken is able to live normally with the dark spore as it was an original spore, but the kids who now have copies, the spore has more of a control on them and they can't live as normally as Ken. Ken asks why Oikawa chose him, and he reveals that he always knew he was a Digidestined and he was just the most vulnerable, and so he used Ken to make the control spires to weaken the defenses of the Digiworld so he could enter through the gate. When the control spires plan failed him, he decided to use the dark spores to weaken the defense from the real world. They converted the innocence of children, which is what allows them to travel to the digital world, into power for Oikawa to be able to go to the digital world himself, which is his lifelong goal. He cries and laments and wishes that he could bring Hiroki with him as well. A gate opens and Oikawa, Arukenimon, Mummymon, the Dark Spore children, and then the younger Digidestined go through this gate. They arrive in another world entirely as the gate to the digital world was sealed by Black Wargreymon. Oikawa freaks out and then a pair of giant lips appear telling him that his dream is over and hope is gone. The mouth reveals that he found Oikawa 3 years ago and has been using him as a host to store his data, morphing the two of them together. In his grief after the death of Hiroki, Oikawa was suffering and feeling abandoned, and it was then that he was consumed by darkness that promised him that he could get to the digital world. He has been controlled by that darkness ever since. Gatomon recognizes the voice, and it is revealed to be none other than Myotismon! Oh my god, this is a crazy reveal I was not expecting. He reveals that the dark spirals were based off of her tail ring, and thus she kind of played a part in his plan. He also reveals that the dark spores are actually just so he can regain his own power. He then harvests them and is reborn again as Mallow Myotismon. In a very dark and quite unpleasant scene, he destroys Arukenimon quite maliciously in front of an emotionally destroyed Mummymon, who is then quickly disposed of as well. As I said, very dark evil is represented in this scene, and it's a sad end to those Digimon. Kari won't let Gatomon digivolve, and all of the kids are paralyzed with pure fear. The only one not really affected is Davis, who is the absolute goat this battle, telling them that if they don't believe in themselves, they'll never win. Only X-Vmon begins the battle with Davis's belief in him. Davis tells everyone that they can't let fear control them. The messaging in these final episodes, and really the whole series itself, is very meaningful. Episode 49, The Last Temptation of the Digidestined. Malomyotismon uses his mental illusion attack, and we see all of the kids living out their fantasies. The first is TK, and we see him with his entire family together, which is so sweet and sad that TK still just really wants his family to reunite. And I so want that for him. Yoli, we see her fantasy as being an only child with unlimited sweets. Cody takes his father to the digital world, and Kari is in a world where humans and Digimon coexist in peace. The kids' Digimon partners are able to break the illusions. We finally see Ken's illusion, and he sees himself as the Digimon Emperor, but his brother Sam comes and encourages him to release his past sins. It is at this point in the series where Ken finally fully forgives himself. The Digidestined unite as the illusions are broken, and we get this really cool thing in that all of the Digimon are able to digivolve into every form they have and exist at the same time, thus allowing us to see all of the Digimon from the series fight together in this battle against the final enemy. The kids acknowledge Davis's strength and courage and realize that without it, they would have been beat. A rift is created and everyone heads through it into the digital world. This reverts the Digimon back into only one form, and Malomyotismon gains even more strength as he then opens a rift to the real world. His plan all along has been to rule over both realms. It is still crazy to me that Myotismon has been the true villain this entire time and represents the truest evil in the Digimon series up to this point. Episode 50, A Million Points of Light. Our grand finale has arrived. The Darkspore children watch as the Digimon do their best to take on Malomyotismon, and they are just the most negative Nellies that you've ever seen in the whole world. They want to just give up and say that everything is terrible, but Davis tells them to knock it off and try. In the real world, we see the older Digidestined and all of the families of all of the Digidestined head to the location of their summer camp in order to reach the digital world, as the Tokyo Gate was sealed by Blackboard Greymon, and this is the next closest place. It's really cool to see them return to the place where it all started. They are also trying to save Noriko and get her to Oikawa. Here we see both of Joe's brothers, and the real Jim actually has a line of dialogue, so again, not really sure why they did all that. Digiports then begin to open all over the world, creating lights throughout the darkness. All of the Digidestined hold up their Digivices to fight against the darkness. All of the partner Digimon of all of the Digidestined around the world show up in the digital world to assist in the battle against Malomyotismon. The kids themselves are then transported there due to the strong bonds that they have with their Digimon, and we see their families back in the real world all show their support and belief. The Darkspore children continue with their negativity, believing that they are unworthy and lesser than due to not having their own Digimon. Davis and TK tell them that it doesn't matter. Everyone has different things that are good and bad. Everyone can have hopes and dreams. Davis reveals that his dream is to open a noodle cart, and you know what? I effing love that. The kids all bond over revealing their dreams, and their positivity weakens Malomyotismon. We learn the lesson that we all have dreams, but when we let other people, or ourselves, convince us that they are worthless or invalid, we lose faith in ourselves, thus creating that self-fulfilling prophecy of failure. But it's never too late. You can do anything if you believe in yourself. The Darkspore kids begin to believe and end up getting their own Digimon partners. Malomyotismon is destroyed by the light of all of the children's Digivices, and the worlds are saved. It's really beautiful. Genai appears and returns Gatomon's tail ring, which was actually apparently very important and instrumental in the DNA digivolving ability, but now that they don't need to do that anymore, she can have it back. He also tells the kids that the other world that they were just in was a place that holds the power to grant wishes. The digital world also has some of that energy and is a mix of digital data and people's dreams. The Darkspores are and remain powerless against the children so long as they believe in themselves in their dreams. Cody grabs Oikawa, who is still inside the dream world, and tries his best to help him fulfill his dream of entering the digital world. In a tragic and poetic scene, Oikawa reunites with his very own partner Digimon, but he is unable to carry his body through. Oikawa disintegrates into energy, allowing him to forever remain in, revitalize, and protect the digital world. Who else is crying? Our series then ends with an epilogue showing the Digidestined 25 years in the future. They all reunite in the digital world, now with their own children. TK is a novelist writing about the Digiworld, and he informs us that now everyone knows about it, and in fact everyone has their own partner Digimon. Tai and Agumon are now acting as diplomats between the two worlds. Matt and Gabumon become an astronaut team and go to Mars because, sure, why not? Sora and Biomon are fashion designers, and I do have qualms with this a little bit because fashion and designing was literally a core part of Mimi's character, so it just feels out of left field for this to randomly be a Sora thing now. As does a lot of this epilogue, to be honest. Joe is now a doctor for the digital world. Mimi has a cooking show. Izzy is a researcher. Kari is a teacher. Ken and Yoli are married. Ken and Stingmon are detectives, and Yoli is a stay-at-home mom. Cody is a defense attorney, and Davis did in fact open his noodle cart. All of their children then head off together, and we see Oikawa's energy watching over them. the series ends with some beautiful lines from TK that I'm going to just quote directly. "So, you can see we are all still having adventures. They're just a little different than the ones we used to have when we were kids. The darkness has not been conquered, and it will continue to fight against the light forever. But as long as people remember to follow their dreams, evil will be kept at bay. And on days like today, it's hard to see any darkness anywhere. Now it's up to our children, and to children everywhere, to follow their dreams. Who knows where they'll end up, but the only way to find out is to take that first step into adventure." Oh, wow, that was crazy good. Rewatching the finale, I actually kind of take back what I originally said about the epilogue. I now think it's super dope and a fitting end not only to Digimon Adventure 02, but to the entirety of the adventure arc. I originally had trouble with the change the series made regarding opening up the digital world to more children and by the end to the whole world, but it's actually quite beautiful and I like that everyone has the potential to enter the Digi world and have their own partner. Sure, where our Digi destined end up is kind of random and maybe against whatever headcanon I might have had as a child, but I'm a fan of it now. I have this knee-jerk reaction to media that begins as a smaller, more insular story and then rapidly becomes large-scale and widely known. For example, in many superhero TV shows like Smallville or Arrow, the hero begins alone or with a very small team, but is eventually incorporated into a large organization, and for those shows that's usually government related, and I feel that that can often ruin the magic. I was worried that this sort of expansion may be the case with Digimon, and that was my initial reaction, but thankfully I think I was wrong, and as I said, this is quite the fitting finale. Okay, now that I've recapped the show's plot in its entirety, I will give some additional reflections and thoughts that I had while watching. So I watched this series through twice, which was a lot, but I love to get into the nitty-gritty of things and just be in full-on analysis mode, so I enjoyed the process. The first time I watched it, I felt myself preferring the back half of the series. This is due to the fact that Ken is more active as a part of the DigiDestined team, and it's really nice to watch his journey and have him come to terms with himself and transform beyond his past. I also think the enemies, as strange as they are and how they evolve, are very compelling. However, there is absolutely value in the earlier episodes. The plot then is simpler, which allows us a stronger focus on the characters. It also, as I have touched on, feels a bit more classically Digimon. The later episodes also would not have meant as much, would not have paid off in the ways that they do, without the base structure of the Emperor arc in place. I feel similarly to the Myotismon arc from Adventure when they are in the real world. It's absolutely my favorite part of the series, and the episodes are so full and good, but they would not have been that way had we not gotten our slow and steady world building. Despite the distinctions I made between the first and kind of second halves of this show, they are all one cohesive plot, even though that's not something we're able to see until we reach near the end. After my rewatch, I came to further appreciate the earlier episodes and, in fact, all aspects of the show. I hardcore binged for the rewatch, and seeing the series in such a short period of time allowed me to see how connected everything was and recognize the characters' depth. I came to really love the new characters, both hero and villain, and their storylines were extremely emotionally compelling and quite deep. Ken, Black War Greymon, Oikawa, these villains, had so much happening emotionally, and they are all also representing redemption and forgiveness. It also shows us how important our connections to others are, and how we all need, deserve, and are able to have friends. Another thing that changed from my first to second viewing is my opinion on the new Digimon partners. I always loved them, but I felt, with the exception of Wormmon, that they were a bit underdeveloped and underutilized when compared to the original series, which may not have been entirely fair. Maybe I thought this because this series takes place in the real world a much larger percentage of the time, so there is less open Digimon interaction to be had and witnessed. And I do think there's some validity to this point, but it's also not as bad as I first thought. All of the new Digimon have their moments. Something I really liked about this series is how they limited the Digimon's power early on with the loss of Gatomon's tail ring and the inability to digivolve. It creates a 0-point restart for this series wherein we now have to build our power back up and create that same growth and rising power of enemies to meet as was in the first series. It also makes the times we do get the classic Digivolutions mean more. The first time I saw Magna Angemon, I was shook. It's so great. And then to see the others in the Digimon World Tour become their ultimates was great as well. And we do have one Warp Digivolution, and it kind of feels out of place by that point, but very welcome. This all lessened the overpoweredness and rebuilt anticipation, so it was a great move. An incredibly minor complaint here, but the opening theme never changes. It shows the Digimon Emperor and says Armor Digivolve the entire time. I would have loved to have seen a second version of the opening for the back half of the season, maybe with Ken as himself and showing Arukenimon and Mummymon, and they could have even included the term DNA Digivolve, but that's alright. The original series did include 2 versions of the opening, and even that didn't feel like enough for that. Back then, the Myotismon arc opening continues throughout the Dark Masters arc, and I would have loved to have seen them reflected in a theme, and they could have included like Warp Digivolving, but again, a very minor thing to nitpick. All in all, this show feels like an extra blessing I never thought I would receive. I kept finding myself very pleasantly surprised by the expansion of Digimon Adventure and the original characters and concepts I have so long loved. In this sense, and at the time in my life I happened to be watching this, it represents letting the unknown surprise me, letting myself believe that the future can be better than the past. And when the future does arrive, it's going to surprise me by how much better it is than what I can currently conceive of. And in a sense, this is the core essence of the show as well. Having hope and believing in oneself and one's dreams/future. It can also demonstrate that these blessings are actually already present. We just have to recognize and engage with them. This show has been out for 25 years, and yet I am only just now seeing it. And in the show, this is represented through the Darkspore children, and later everyone, already having their own Digipartner the whole time, just not knowing or believing it. Okay, with that, this analysis draws to a close. Please do let me know your thoughts in the comments. I would absolutely love to know what you think of this series, what you remember from it, what you enjoy about it, if you have any comments on anything that I said. I mentioned my Digimon movie video earlier. Please feel free to check that out if you're a big fan of the franchise. And I may make a video on the original Digimon Adventure, but your girl needs a Digibreak for now, so who knows when that might be. I know that there are multiple other Digimon series out there as well, including a brand new one that's been airing, so perhaps I'll entertain those someday too. I also talk about other random media, so go ahead and check me out. But thank you so much for watching this. It's my largest effort yet, but was very enjoyable to make start to finish. Thanks again. Now go out there and find yourself some adventure.